Hello everyone, my name is Auro and welcome to the 8th devlog of my base building game Chambers of Devious Design. In this devlog, I will be giving the player some special abilities to play around with, and I will also be making some visual improvements to my room placement code. Alright, let's get started. This week I started with designing a new functionality that will enable players to influence the gameplay with special abilities. I decided that the first special ability would enable the player to destroy open doorways. I started with the game being able to detect the mouse over open doorways, and then I added a small shader animation to visualize which doorways are targetable. Currently, the player can only target his or her own doorways. After that, I added some code to actually remove the doorway when clicked and also detect if you remove the final open doorway in that room. While this ability could easily be used to sabotage other players, it should actually be really useful for closing the doorways in your own rooms, as closing up the final doorway in a room activates whatever completion bonus that room has. To finish the work on this ability, I also added another shader animation to have the door glow red when it disappears. Now you can pretend to be a wizard who is melting all the doorways into the Great Void. I decided to continue with the same theme and next add a special ability for destroying rooms. I already had the code ready for destroying rooms, so to add this ability I just had to copy the selection code from the previous ability and adjust it to work with rooms instead of doorways. I then also added a simple glow animation with a shader to visualize which rooms are currently targetable. Overall, this ability was very fast to add. I imagine it will be a very powerful ability, so it will likely be rare, or maybe I will later on add some type of a limitation to balance it out. Moving on to the next ability, I decided to give the player the ability to give one of his or her rooms an upgrade level. This should be a pretty flexible ability that can be very useful but not too powerful on its own. I had the upgrade levels already ready and working, so adding this ability was once again a very quick task. My current idea with these abilities is that they would be one-time consumable items that you can earn in the game and use whenever you want to. For this purpose, I needed to create a panel where to store these abilities and from where you can also use them. If you are curious how I implemented this, the icons are basically just pictures with a button in them. Each player has a list of what abilities they currently have, and it works so that if you click the second icon in this panel, it activates the second ability in the player's ability list. I then just periodically update this panel and the icons in it to match the current player's list. The functionalities for all the abilities are handled in a script dedicated to just that, and I also use scriptable objects to store all the data I need to have for the abilities, like name, description and rarity. To give the player at least one way to get these abilities, I gave the pink room a completion bonus of granting one consumable ability to the player. By the way, I don't know if you noticed earlier, but my destroy room special ability only let you target your own rooms. I figured that wasn't a very good ability, all things considered, so I changed it so that you can now target the other player's rooms instead of yours. That should hopefully make it a little better. I decided to still add one more new ability, the ability to refresh the available rooms. It's simple, useful, and it was quick to add. What's there not to like? I am not yet quite sure how common these abilities will be, how the players will get them, and also generally how big of an influence I want them to have in the game. For that reason, I decided to stick with just these 4 abilities for now and then add some more later on. Next, I decided to improve my available rooms section. Currently, the rooms are just laying there on top of a fake UI panel. My idea is that the player will be able to move and zoom the camera freely, and it would be nice if these rooms were visible no matter where the camera is. So essentially, I want the section to function like a UI window. But the issue is that the rooms themselves are not UI elements. They exist in the world space which is separate from the UI layer. Getting the rooms to follow the camera was easy. I just move them whenever the camera moves. The scaling of the rooms, on the other hand, wasn't quite so simple. I had to do quite a bit of tinkering and testing before I was able to get them to scale properly with the zooming. The scaling also wasn't enough. I also needed to move the rooms in their world coordinates based on the viewport coordinates of where they were originally. I was able to crack it though. Now they move nicely when the camera moves or zooms. Now I just had the issue of my blocks being the wrong size when I am placing them. Well, just adjust their scale when they are placed, right? Well, yeah, it wasn't without its issues though. I had to do quite a bit of debugging before I was able to get it to work properly. My rooms were made to work with a scale of 1, so when I want to change that, it ended up breaking a few things that I needed to fix. But luckily, after these adjustments, it now works great. I felt like the scale change could be a bit too abrupt when the camera was zoomed out, so I decided to add this nifty little animation when you're dragging the room away from the panel. It wasn't without its own bugs to fix though. But with those fixed and out of the way, I think the effect looks really smooth and adds a nice touch to the different zoom levels. In case you are wondering how it works, I have a specific X-coordinate set relative to the camera view. When I pick up a room, an update function activates that detects when the room passes that specific X-coordinate and scales the room to the target scale using a lerping function. One issue I still had with the available rooms section was that the blocks often went over the lines of the UI panel. So I wrote a script that checks the bounds of the rooms and then adjusts their position so they fit within the rectangle they are within. After that, I was still left with the issue of the rooms sometimes overlapping each other within this panel. So I wrote an additional method that checks the colliders of the rooms and tries to adjust their positions so that they are not colliding with each other. It's not perfect, but I think it will do its job in 99% of the cases. I'll worry about the last 1% when I have more information about how big my biggest rooms will end up being and what the available rooms area will actually end up looking like. I probably already over-engineered this component considering at which point of development I am in, but I'm fairly confident I will be able to use this code with only minor adjustments no matter what the final version will look like. Speaking of over-engineering, I figured that while I'm still working on this section, I would make the rooms look a bit more visually pleasant when they appear. I decided to accomplish this with a small scaling animation when the rooms first appear. While it looks simple, I did have to put some effort into making sure that it works well together with all the other features I just added. Even if it's not obvious from looking at it, the sizes and positions of the available rooms are constantly changing when the camera is moving. So I had to make sure that when the camera is moving, it won't interfere with the appearance animation, and that when that animation is finished, the rooms will actually be the right size no matter where the camera is currently at. I have to say that making all these features work together with the different zoom levels wasn't really that trivial or fun. I hope it won't go to waste, as I haven't yet made the final decision on how the game will play out in regards to the zoom levels. Forcing the zoom to just one level would have been the easiest choice, but I feel like if I did that, it would be too restricting design-wise and probably also annoying for the player. Having multiple zoom levels doesn't have those problems, but it can introduce many other problems, like making the visuals look messy or forcing me to make more customizations in my code. I hope having multiple zoom levels is the right choice. But even if I do end up changing my mind on that, this work wasn't for nothing, as I have found out that often making a decision either way and pushing forward is better than stopping and trying to make the final decision then and there. By pushing forward, you are at least able to get new information. That new information will either prove that you made the right choice, or if it doesn't, you can then use that information to come up with a new and better informed design. All this work also made me very familiar working with the 3 different coordinate systems in Unity. Anything that teaches you new things can't be a waste, right? And that's where I will end this devlog. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you think about the new features I added to the game. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.